I, 18M, live on a farm a few minutes out of town. It used to be my grandparents' farm, but after they passed away, we moved in just over a year ago. Next to our farm sits a relatively small house, tucked away behind a tree line, like a cottage from a fairy tale. The house wasn't always empty. It used to belong to the grandparents of a boy I knew from elementary school, but they had passed away a long time ago. After that, the house sat empty for a long time. Eventually, it was bought by some people I don't know. I used to play around there all the time when I was little, whenever I visited my grandparents, which was pretty much every week. I know I wasn't allowed to, but the owners were hardly ever around anyway. They only showed up on Sundays to do some chores around the house. I would sneak in through a hole in the fence and play around on that property. They had a very large pond and one of those small farm windmills that made you feel like you were in an old western movie. One day, when I was playing, I got curious and went up to the house. I tried to peek in through the windows, but all the curtains were drawn. What glimpses I did get revealed quite a mess of furniture inside. Just as I wanted to get a closer look, I saw someone move inside. Shit, they're home, I thought. I hurried my way to the chain-link fence. I would have to climb, as the opening in the fence was on the other side of the property. I saw a light turn on upstairs, and I saw a silhouette walking around. I was terrified of getting spotted, so I hurried over the fence. I was in such a hurry that I didn't take my time climbing the fence, and I got stuck by my pants. In that moment, I knew I would get caught. That's when I yanked on my leg, and I got free, but the sweatpants I was wearing ripped. I'm pretty sure they didn't see me, but I never went back. After that incident, I never went back. I never even dared look at that place again until last year, that is, when we moved in. Our property is expansive. We have many fields, one of which is right in front of this house, and another is right behind the house. Therefore, we also have access to the same little road that leads to their driveway, and the nosy bastard I am, I would always walk my dog through that field and over that road, just so I could look at that strange place again. Actually, it wasn't the house that felt weird. It looked largely the same as when I was little. In fact, the house was in a far better state, even if the chain-link fence was still old and looked like it couldn't keep out a baby bunny. It was these people who were strange. They bought a picturesque home in the countryside, and just never showed up. I didn't know these people, but my parents told me they lived not too far away, which made sense. How else could they show up every Sunday for a few hours if they lived far away? That made sense, I suppose, but the idea of them buying a vacation home so close to their actual home feels even stranger. I stayed at home for New Year's Eve. My parents were out of town, and my brother went to celebrate with his girlfriend, but I just stayed home alone. I know it sounds sad, but I just hadn't planned anything. Besides, someone had to take care of the dogs. Those poor little guys are scared to death of fireworks. From the living room window, I could look straight at that house. The lights were on, and there was a car in the driveway, so I knew they must be celebrating here. However, that was about the only sign of life I got. When the clock struck midnight, I went outside to look at the fireworks that were going off in town. My other neighbors also went outside to look, and I wished them a happy new year. They even invited me over for a glass of champagne. As I went with them, I looked at that house again. The lights were still on, but no one was outside. Who stays indoors during New Year's Eve? I thought. That is when I realized I hadn't seen any light from that house all night. All the same lights were on, and I didn't even see a shadow moving behind the curtains. There was just nothing. I shrugged off the strange feeling I got and went inside with my neighbors. We chatted for a bit over an hour, and I forgot all about what I saw that night. That is when I called it a night. My parents would be home soon anyway. I walked back home, and that disturbed feeling in my gut returned as I looked back at that house. Nothing had changed. The living room light was still on. Nothing else. I didn't tell my parents when they got home. What was I supposed to say? The neighbors didn't wish me a happy new year. I just went to bed with that strange feeling. That was the first incident. Looking back, it was so tame compared to everything that followed. The next incident happened last week. I was walking my dog after dinner. It was around 7 p.m., so it was already dark out. I walked through the fields like I always do. However, this time I decided to take a slightly different route and walk through the far field, around the back of that house. At that point, I thought I saw something in the field, standing there. I pointed my flashlight at it, and there he was, a man just standing there. I'm pretty sure he was my neighbor. I mean, they had owned that house for almost a decade, but I hadn't seen him before, let alone spoken to him. Sure, I've caught glimpses before, but I never got a good look. But who else could it be standing here in our field? My dog had gone ballistic at the unknown figure standing menacingly in the dark. I can't blame her. I yelled at him, "What the hell are you doing here?" And he darted away before I could even finish my sentence. I wanted to go after him, but he was on the other side of the field. Besides, I've seen enough horror movies not to chase a strange figure I saw at night. I cut my walk short and ran back home. My legs felt like jello every step of the way. It felt like they were going to give in, and that man would return. My dog didn't seem to have that problem. She ran as if her life depended on it. She practically dragged me along to the safety of my home. When I reached the front door, I was shivering. Tears streamed down my face, but I don't know if I was crying from the cold or from what I saw. My mother ran to me, and when she saw my face, she asked me what was wrong. I told my parents everything, and they were shaken too. My mother stammered. Maybe it was some crook who wanted to break into our shed to steal equipment another farm was broken into a few weeks ago. I'm sure that is what you saw, she said. It sounded more like she was trying to convince herself than me. I don't want you going back to that field at night anymore. Who knows what could have happened? She followed. I don't know how I managed to fall asleep that night, but eventually I did. The next morning, I went back to the field. Maybe it had all just been my imagination. It was dark after all. Sometimes you see things in the dark that aren't there, I told myself, even though I knew what I saw was real. What I found only confirmed my fears. After searching for a bit, I found muddy boot prints. I I followed them for a bit, and I saw they led back to that house dead when I remembered how startled he looked, like he wasn't expecting me to be there at all. I didn't think the neighbors were home anyway. There wasn't a car in their driveway after all. At that point, things started to click. I had been walking that same route every day for months. Every night. At the same time. The only difference that night was that I cut through the field. That's when I realized something worse. He hadn't been startled. He'd been surprised I'd changed the route. In that moment, I thought back to that incident when I was a kid. I don't remember seeing a car that day. I would have noticed. I always did. If there had been a car that day, I never would have gone there. That day, I decided to change all my routines. I never walked the dog at TH.